What's up, LJS Standards Podcast listeners? Just wanted to make this short little episode, I guess more like an announcement, to say that, we just hit a really cool, fun, important mile marker in the LJS Standards Podcast. And I wanted to share that with you because it's really you guys, the listeners, that have made this happen. And so I'm really proud to announce that the LJS Standards Podcast has recently passed the 1 million downloads marker for all total episodes, which is super awesome. And this is so fun because it comes on the 3-year birthday of the podcast that we hit this mile marker. And I actually discovered it by accident. I looked at the stats to see where things at, but I was actually at PodFest Multimedia Expo in Orlando, Florida this last week, which is a conference for podcasters, content creators like me. It was a lot of fun, great conference, and I was looking up some stats just to help share with someone who was asking me about them, and that's when I saw it. That's when I saw that we had over 1 million. In fact, we have 1,018,000 total downloads, and that's over with 4 episodes per month, right? Because if I had 8 episodes a month, then it would be maybe 2 million, right? So generally, just to nerd out on you for a second with podcast stats. I know this isn't jazz stuff here or music stuff here, but in case you're interested, when it comes to podcasting, the most important metric really is how many downloads per episode you have over a given period of time. That's a better representation of how many people are actually listening to the podcast. And I'm proud to announce that on average, our episodes are in the 8% to 7% of all podcasts that exist, according to Libsyn, which is the biggest podcasting host. So, in other words, we have a podcast here that has a lot of people, a lot of jazz musicians around the world listening to it every single week. But the total downloads, even though it's not as important, it's important to me. And I'll tell you why total downloads is. It's not because it's a vanity metric like, wow, we got 1 million downloads. It's because to me, that means I've helped you guys 1 million different times. Whether you've listened to every single episode of this show, I've been able to help serve you with some new jazz education content, help you some way in your jazz playing. And that is exactly why I do this, so to understand that that's what's going on here. That's why I'm so proud to announce this. But I don't want to take all the credit for this. In fact, I can only take some of the credit. It's all on you guys. Thank you so much for being a listener. If you have left a rating review on the show, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You've helped this podcast grow. You've helped get the word out about jazz education, helping other people become better musicians. If you've ever shared this podcast or a podcast episode with a friend or on social media because you knew it would help some other people, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. If you've ever come on and, said, hey, Brent, I have something to offer to the audience. We've had several people, and we have another person coming up on the podcast this next week from the audience who said, you know what, Brent, I have some expertise to share. I want to pay it forward and just share with the audience what I know. Thank you so much for doing that. For anyone who's ever asked a question on the podcast, who sent me an email with an encouraging word, thank you so much. You are the people that make this podcast so successful, and I'm just super proud. I'm really super proud of the Learn Jazz Standards community. So thank you so very much. And if you are someone who listens every single week, you are really the lifeblood of this podcast, keeping me moving forward, keeping me motivated. If you're someone who even just listens on the occasion, I really appreciate you. I appreciate every single listen. I don't take it for granted at all. So we're celebrating 1 million plus downloads today. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Wanted to share that with you guys because I believe it's important. I want you to know that a lot of people are listening to this podcast. You are a part of a big community of jazz musicians and aspiring jazz musicians who have a passion for music, have a passion for jazz, want to learn, and believe in the power of music. And so thank you so much. I'm looking forward to serving you for many more years to come. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, and I'll see you in next week's episode.